Mike here at CBI Off-Road. Today we're going to be installing our full skids on a 5th gen 4Runner. Let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so first thing we're going to be doing is removing all of our factory stuff. We do have a small plastic kind of skid right here that is going to need to be removed. And we'll go ahead and remove the factory front and then the factory rear skid. Alright, so once we got our factory skids removed, we're going to have a couple braces that are going to be in our way for our CBI skids. So we're going to go ahead and remove these two front braces right here. And then there's two rear braces come across here that we're going to go ahead and remove as well. These just held on with three 14mm bolts on each side. So we're going to go ahead and remove those, and we do want to keep our factory hardware. Alright, so removing the rear ones, they're just four 12mm bolts that we're going to go ahead and remove and just pull these out real quick. Alright, so if you're installing full skids, you're going to get a cross member for the rear back here. Where that's going to be bolting in is you have a brake line bracket right here that has a 12mm bolt, and we're going to go ahead and pull that one out. And this bolt is a little bit short, but those factory bolts you pulled out of these front brace or these middle braces, they're nice and long, and we're going to go ahead and replace those with these. We're going to have one on each side. We'll show you where the other side is. All right, so now on the other side, we do have just an empty hole, but it's all threaded, ready to go right there. And again, we're going to use one of our longer bolts that we pulled out of these middle braces, and that'll go right in, and we'll bolt up this mid cross member. All right, so getting ready to put our rear cross member in here. Again, we're going to be going to our original bolt hole for our brake line bracket, and then the bolt hole right over here. So let's go ahead and set this thing up there. Get it in. All right, so once we got our rear cross member up in place, we're going to want to leave it kind of loose so we can kind of move it around until we get the rest of the skids together. Once all the skids are all put together, then we go ahead and tighten everything down as one piece. All right, so now we got our rear cross member in. We're going to go ahead and we're going to put our front skid on. We're going to go ahead and reutilize basically all the spots that we took out. So there's going to be 4 bolt holes across the front, 2 in the middle. Now we're going to use 2 carriage bolts on the middle, so we'll get to those. But first we're going to go ahead and put a couple of them in just to hold the skid up in place. I'm putting an aluminum skid on, so this one's pretty light. If you're doing steel, you're probably going to want a friend to help you kind of put it up in place. But like I said, this one's pretty light, so. Then just set that in place. Get the rest of them put in. Alright, so we are reusing our factory hardware. I just went ahead and reused 2 of those 14mm bolts we took out of our braces. We're going to go ahead and use 2 more of those 14mm bolts. They're going to go back into the front of this skid, and then 2 of our original 12mm bolts are going to take up these other 2 front holes. Alright, so we're getting ready to put in our 2 3.5-inch half-inch carriage bolts. They're going to go in our 2 rear holes here that are going to go up through the cross member. You're also going to have a half-inch strut washer and then just a half-inch serrated flange nut that's going to go on top. And we'll go ahead and toss those in. so now we got our front skid in. It is still kind of loose in place, and then we're gonna put our rear skid in. Once we get our rear skid in, all the nuts and bolts, everything in that one, we can go ahead and go through and tighten everything else down. All right, so we're getting ready to put our rear skid in. I just have a single post here that's going to help just hold the end of the front of our skid in place while I get some of these back bolts to hold up. And then once we do that, we can pull that out. We can put some of our front ones in, and we can go through, finish putting the rest of them in. We are going to be using our short 1/2-inch carriage bolts. Should be 4 of them, along with a serrated flange nut on the inside. All right, so now we got our rear bolts in, holding this in place. We're going to go ahead and put our 3/8 carriage bolts in the front. They're just going to have a serrated flange nut with them. So we'll go ahead and put those up. Once we get those in, then we can go ahead and go through and put the rest of our bolts in. All right, so once we got our front and rear carriage bolts in, we're going to go ahead and put our center bolts through the cross member here. They're going to be a 3/8 by 4-inch bolt with another 3/8 strut washer and then a serrated flange nut there. So there's going to be one on each side. We're going to go ahead and throw these up through. All right, so once we got all of our bolts, everything in place, now we can go ahead and tighten everything up and make sure everything's, kind of in position. That's why we leave everything loose. And then we'll go ahead and we'll move on. We'll put our small covers on for our oil filter and oil. All right, so we're going to go ahead and put our small covers on that are for your oil filter and then your oil to drain. The covers are pretty obvious which one goes which place. You're just going to have 4 3/16 bolts, or 3/16 Allen bolts to go ahead and thread in there. We're going to go ahead and put these up. Alright, so once you got all your covers, everything's all tight, you are done with the install. So that takes care of everything. If you have any questions or concerns, you can give us a call here at CBI Off-Road or email us. Thanks.